Hello, everyone, and welcome to our fireside webinar, How Tomorrow.io uses AI to drive marketing, innovation, and global engagement. I'm your host, Anna Puig. I'm the Demand Generation Manager here at HeyGen. And today we have three visionary panelists from Tomorrow.io who are redefining what's possible with AI-driven marketing. So over here, we've got Kelly Peters, the VP of Marketing at Tomorrow.io. We have Ruth Favela, AI Marketing Manager, and then Madison Sofield, AI content strategy and video creation extraordinaire. So today we're going to discuss insights from Tomorrow.io's collaboration with HeyGen. If you haven't caught that case study, you can check it out on our blog in the resources section on our website. And in that case study, what we showcased was that they are just using HeyGen and marketing tactics in really innovative, exciting ways. So for the webinar today, we're going to go through a fireside chat. So you're going to hear from all three of our panelists. They're going to share direct use cases from their everyday life at Tomorrow.io, speaking from a place of expertise as marketers. Feel free to get all of your questions out in our Q&A section. We've got some fantastic folks on the back end who are helping us out to make sure all of those questions will get answered at the end of the session today. And because we are live, we'll also have live Q&A, so we'll make this interactive. So we're so excited to share all of our insights with you. So I think we can kick off the discussion. So Kelly, let's start with you. Can you give us a broad overview of Tomorrow.io's mission and your team's approach to AI-powered marketing?
Definitely. So first off, hello, everyone. And Anna, thank you so much for having us. We love HeyGen. We love talking about this topic today. So we just couldn't be more excited to be talking to you all. Yes, so to start out, we are Tomorrow.io, as Anna said. We are a resilience platform powered by proprietary space data and AI ML technology. And what that means is that we help organizations across the world, across all sectors, to adapt to the impact of weather before it actually hurts their bottom line or hurts their employees. So we do all of this to help them, improve efficiency, protect their employees, like I said, and be more resilient overall. And the way that we do it, just to give you some quick background on the technology itself, because it's a pretty cool company, if we do say so ourselves, is three quick ways. So we have satellites in space that give us the best available data. We push that data into models, our own proprietary models, and then we push it out into a software platform. And in that software platform, we tell the organizations what to do about the forecast instead of just what the forecast is. So example being, instead of telling a rail company, there's a 40% chance of rain, we tell them, don't send the train around mile marker 27 or else you will risk derailment. So it's really actionable and tuned to their risk profile. Example customers, Ford, Uber, US Air Force, biggest names across all sectors. So that's a little bit about our mission. And then to the second part of your question, Anna, I think about how we are looking at AI, right, as a team.
Yeah.
So we're a small team. First off, you heard about the mission, you heard about the deep tech behind it, but we're really lean. And so we really saw AI when it really came out, GPT, for example, at this point over a year ago, not just as an opportunity for us, but as something that it was a must. We had to lean in and really proactively embrace this rather than just passively explore it, because there's no way that we could compete with these, huge marketing teams with huge budgets. It just wasn't possible for us. So we said look, this AI thing, we have to really actively embrace it. Part of that was bringing on Ruth, who you'll hear from, and then Madison with a really specific focus on AI. But yeah, we really dove in, as I said, and part of that is HeyGen, because video, we know, is a key part of our strategy. We'll talk more about how we've been using it in some of the projects, but we know video works for us. And so we needed a way to do it faster and something that didn't cost a fortune, basically, and speed things up. And so that's where HeyGen came in. So yeah, we just use AI to punch above our weight. And ultimately, again, it's not just a tool for us. It is a core part of our operations, how we innovate, how we think about marketing every day.
Amazing. And also, speaking personally, I've worked at larger enterprises like Calendly and Asana, and even with a huge marketing team with 63 people, you can use AI to save on budget in places that you might not have imagined, like cutting agency costs, not having to hire actors, all of those kinds of things for your campaigns.
100%.
So, Kelly, thank you for that overview. And Ruth, I'd love to kick it over to you now. So as an AI marketing manager, how does AI shape the marketing initiatives at tomorrow.io, especially with an eye towards this new year that we're in, 2025?
Yeah, so I would say it shapes them in a lot of different ways. I think, as Kelly said, we're a pretty small team, so our motto is to 80-20 things. And if we can use AI from the get-go, then we'll try to take that route. So, for example, AI enables the scalability of content creation, which is why we use HeyGen. We use a slew of other AI video tools and just like large language models. Like we are big ChatGPT users here. AI helps us figure out like what insights need to be used to optimize our campaigns. We're using AI for hyper personalization and outbound. It's automating our like workflows. We're Monday.com users using AI and automations in there to make sure that we're all aligned on projects that are going forward. But I think that what we really try to do is align the overall goal of what we're trying to accomplish with the AI tool that we want to use, right? So we're not just thinking about using AI tools to use AI tools. We're thinking about what is our number one goal as a marketing team, as a company, and how do our individual roles and what we try to accomplish roll up to those overall goals? And then how do we plug in AI into the places where we know we need more efficiency or we need more output? That's kind of how we see using AI strategically, right? It's not just let's plug it in and play around. It's let's plug it in where we know that we do this a lot and it creates a big impact for us. And then we try to align things that way. So it's a lot of different ways, but it really is just like, what is the overall goal and how can we use AI to boil up to that? And make sure that we are actually doing things that will contribute to the biggest impacts for the organization.
And when you say 80-20 things, let's double click into that. What does that mean to your team?
That means, putting 80% of your effort towards the biggest part of the project, and then kind of like speeding up the rest of it. I think, Kelly, I'm sure you can outline that a little better than I can. But it really is just like moving fast and trying something as we go. We are very signal based. So if we have an idea, we're not necessarily going to completely bake out that entire process. We're like, hey, let's try it. And if it resonates with our audience, then we can do more of it, right? When I first started at Tomorrow, I was an AI specialist, which meant that I was doing a lot of just like the foundational AI things for the team. Where can we plug in AI into our content strategy? How can we repurpose and distribute all of the content that we currently have access to without having to create more? And so it was a lot of like, okay, well, I think this is going to work. Let me go try it. And oh, it's working. Let me do it again. And oh, let me try this. That didn't resonate that first time. I don't think right now is a good time to do that. Let's come back to it later. So like we move fast and we make decisions based off the signals that we're seeing. Kelly, Madison, I'm not sure if you guys want to add anything there to that strategy, but I feel like that kind of like outlines how we try to move forward a lot too. And our CMO is very, like, let's stay on top of this and move forward and try things. We're very empowered to try as much as we can, and then move forward with where we are seeing results.
That makes perfect sense. And so saying that back, you've got a lean team, you're highly selective in what you put in your tech stack, and you're only going to keep tools that are really unlocking a lot of potential and gains in the short term for your team, because you're moving too fast really to have to worry about onboarding something that isn't actually going to have a big impact. So moving further into that, when we're talking about HeyGen, and from our blog, we talked about one strategy is defining your goals and your audience when you're creating a campaign. How do you apply this principle when you're deciding on AI tools for your campaigns? So particularly for translating ads, documentaries, or other content.
Yeah, so I think I look at tools that have more than one purpose. I think 2-3 years ago, we were seeing a lot of point solutions when it came to AI that could easily solve one very specific thing for you. And in the 2 years since, we have now seen big platforms come through that can do everything. So for example, HeyGen can translate content, it can help us make avatars, and it can help us like personalize content later on. So we've moved to these platform-based solutions because they align better with the overall goal of what we're trying to accomplish. And it really is like, what is the overall process that we're trying to create? And then in that 5-step process, which of which of those steps takes the longest and where can we plug in AI there? And, oh, this one point solution can only solve for this one part of it. Well, this platform has a few other things that it can do, and it can solve for much more of that entire process. So it really is like still aligning what the tool is capable of doing with what the goal is of the of the strategy or the process that we're trying to create for marketing. And then aligning that with, okay, well, this can help us do this. And, XYZ and all of that content can get done through this process. And then we'll plug in more tools as we go there. And so we're very much thinking about like, can this actually do that? And can it do more than that? Because I don't want to have 12-point solutions in my tech stack. I want to have a platform that can do 5 of those and then maybe 2 or 3-point solutions.
So when it comes to like repurposing content, as marketers, especially when you've only got a few people on the team, every white paper, every piece of content that you're putting a ton of effort in, you want to stretch that as far as you can. So when it comes to using HeyGen or like video-based content, how is your team like repurposing that content, and what are some common ways that you use HeyGen to do that?
Yeah, so Madison will speak to this a little more later, but for the most part, it is how can we turn, for example, if you have a blog, how do you turn that blog into a video? For the most part, our strategy is to start with the video, because the video, you're already building a script, which means you can turn that into a blog, which means you can turn it into other things, and you can edit based off of the script. But if you're working backwards, then you still have to make that video so that you can create 10 more things from the video and easily do it, rather than having to take one paragraph of your blog and turn that into a video, right? So it really is taking written content to video or video back to written, and then turning that into a ton of video clips, into some emails, into recap blogs, using it in outbound nurture sequences, and content that way.
No, fantastic overview. And even in building this webinar started as a customer case study. And then in reading it, I said, the way that this team is leveraging HeyGen, I really want to learn more about that. And so then I reached out to all of you, and you were game to share your experience with our community and the marketers who are already leveraging HeyGen for their teams. And so we'll probably take clips from this recording, and then we'll use HeyGen to translate it so that we can share it with a wider global audience. So amazing. What would be the first piece of content that you'd build first for a campaign like this? Like, what's the easiest thing to repurpose the farthest, do you think?
Are you talking about the webinar?
Or no, just for like any piece of content, like what's the most common thing that you start with? Like, do you start with a blog post? Do you start with?
We usually start with video. At Tomorrow, we're very video first. So for example, we just released a documentary, and from that documentary, we created a teaser video and a trailer. And those 2 shortened videos from the 30-minute video are what we're using repeatedly in ads and in social content. And then once we released it, we were able to cut down that 30-minute video into 10 to 15 different video clips. And from there, using those in the same pattern of like, let's recap what was going on here, get more people to it, and then direct them to our landing page. So when you start with the video, you're able to create a whole bunch more because you can edit based off of that transcript. And your blog can just be a recap of what happened in the webinar or the video, rather than having to build, okay, here's a blog that goes side by side with this video.
And I think I'd add to that, just always like having the outcome in the focus there, meaning like, it's not like we're just creating to create whenever we repurpose. It's like we created the documentary. One of the themes of the documentary, our sales team is giving us feedback that they're hearing in calls that we can double tap into and use that to create then a piece of enablement material, a one-pager that really speaks to an actual problem statement. So exactly what Ruth said. Also, it's not just creating to create, it's always having that end goal and like dynamically collaborating to understand like where we can best support with the repurposing. Amazing.
So I'd love to dig into a little bit of your case study. And Madison, I'd also love to hear from you. So maybe what does an AI content strategist do at tomorrow.io? So if you could give us an overview of that, that'd be amazing. Yeah.
I can totally give you an overview of that. It's pretty broad. I think like in general, with like Ruth's support, we have lots of amazing different like AI tools across the board from the beginning, right? Using ChatGPT to plan out what the content should look like, give me a template of maybe a design I'm creating, a script I want for a video, how I should repurpose a video material. Then we go into tools within the actual content making process, if that's the graphic design or within the video tools I use, and then all the way downstream to like how do we use AI as well to push it out on socials especially or ads like on Influ. So I think in general, like broad touch, like probably from start to finish, I'm thinking about like what are we creating for what audience and how am I implementing AI throughout it so it's a more efficient process. I think like the biggest takeaway when we had a call before when we were kind of realizing that this case study could become like a webinar was how much more efficient we became with something like HeyGen, like a process that would probably have taken me weeks and weeks and weeks to produce like a high quality, high res video or ad that we could push out to important target prospects. It took me only maybe a week. Well, maybe should have taken me a month. So I think it's a really major difference. Obviously, I implemented other AI tools too, and like the post production that I'll probably go into later. But yeah, I mean that's the biggest thing is like how do we use AI to make us more efficient all across the board, and that's also super duper supported by Ruth and Kelly as well. And that's something I've been learning at Tomorrow is like how can I make this process shorter and more efficient and replicable with AI as well. So hopefully I did a good broad scope of what I do.
No, you gave a fantastic overview, and even double clicking into that further. When you say that previously it would have taken months, what about the process before you used HeyGen is different? And were you leveraging things like outside agencies or other resources? Like what part of it was the biggest time spent?
I think that I'll answer a bit, but I also think that Ruth and Kelly could speak to this as well because I know they were producing things prior to me joining with HeyGen. I was very lucky to join once we already had HeyGen, but I also know that they were using non-HeyGen before in high quality, high res videos. But from my understanding, the biggest thing is like we are really lucky to have existing high quality content. We oftentimes in the Boston offices have a video set up where we can record our amazing CMO Dan Slagan to be willing to be in a lot of our AI avatars. We also have others who are comfortable coming to the office and record. Before that would mean coordination, a video team, lighting, like getting everything and all the pieces together, including a script, right? And the script has to be approved, set, that behind just that day of shooting would take maybe a week or two in advance to set up. And then we have to film it, get that video footage back and like really just tweak with it. The nice thing about HeyGen is I build a script. If everybody likes it, I go ahead. We have already an amazing AI avatar coming from our video footage that we get, and it just cuts down like probably weeks of organizing and planning. And Dan's very busy too. So it's nice to just give him a break and he can focus on what he needs to focus on and I can just use AI Dan and make sure he likes it.
But yeah. At some point I would love to talk to human Dan about what his experience of becoming an avatar that's so prolific is, because it's a really common thing. If you Google the uncanny valley, it's like a really old AI term, but humans are kind of uncomfortable with things that look human but aren't quite there. And Ruth and Kelly, do you have anything to add to what life was like before HeyGen for your marketing processes?
Yeah, I would just say, like, first off, like human production, real video will always be there. We're certainly not saying that it'll ever be fully replaced, but we were doing it exclusively before. And as we all know, like it's so time intensive, very production cost heavy, as Madison said. And so it's still part of it, but what we were doing before took so much more time. And also I think an important part of this is we now can automate more so like the day-to-day marketing engine, which allows us to be freed up to think bigger for more strategic creative projects. So like if you're a big team, you probably you're spending a lot of time just creating content that you need for like the daily machine, as I'm saying. But this really has allowed us to think about like that documentary, for example, and how we can go create something with a real human production company because we don't have to think about the day-to-day rote tasks as much.
Amazing. And Ruth, from an AI marketing perspective, how did working with AI avatars streamline your video production process?
Well, as marketers, I think we all know that our executives' time is very valuable. It's hard to get your CEO to dedicate an hour of their time regularly for any content. Excuse me, got something in my throat. But it's cut down on needing them. Truthfully, like we don't need Dan, for example, to record a 15-minute video every single time that we need new content and then do different takes every time and hire our videographer to come on site and create that content. Now we can record a bunch of avatar footage, upload it to HeyGen, and then create additional content that way. It's sped up how we're training, or like how we're able to develop scripts and then see what they're like instead of having him test out the footage, right? Like we all want to know what it sounds like when we're writing something. Well, with HeyGen, we can just listen to it and, oh, that doesn't sound right. We need to fix something here. That saves us hours of time of back and forth editing. So it really is just the planning process, and the coordination has been cut down tremendously, as well as being able to like execute on the actual video that we're creating. And then, HeyGen isn't perfect. We love it, but there are a couple of things that like, you'll get like a weird hand movement, or you'll get a weird eye twitch. We've noticed that has come up. Yeah. And so we're downloading the video and then we're still continuing to edit it post HeyGen. We use a tool called Descript. We upload to Descript and then we use additional stock footage or stock video to overlay things. We'll use product visuals and our own product in the video to actually connect, the concept of the script with what we're trying to show. So it's like kind of a way to like edit things while also incorporating HeyGen and everything else we're using. And I know Madison can also speak to the post-production part of this as well.
Absolutely. Madison, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I would say like just on Ruth's point, like the nice thing is like, right, when you have a human, right, you can tell them, okay, redo, and in the moment you can have those things. But then once you've been taken away from like the set, it's like you have what you have and you're stuck with it. And there's definitely been some HeyGen quirks that I've found to be really fun. There's like sometimes a 2-eye blink that happens occasionally, or just like hand movements that just feel like kind of a little bit of that uncanny valley, as you were mentioning, where it's like, that just doesn't feel right. And that's okay, because ultimately what I can go and do is, first of all, clean it all up in post-production, layer some things over it. But another thing too is like we recently implemented another AI avatar, Dan. He has a lot less of his quirks of like hand movements or blinking. So this is like probably our best avatar yet. But sometimes like he just sounds a bit monotone. And so instead of being like stuck with that video that I originally had and go, okay, well, I can't change his tone. I can go back in, I can adapt, I can add lots of exclamation points to make Dan sound more enthusiastic in a part that originally didn't. So there's just like little ways that I do think it's like been really great to like, you don't have to go back as again, like, a leader at the company to go, hey, can you reshoot this really quickly? And instead be able to do something manually really quickly. And there's always going to be quirks, even with, real video interviews or, using HeyGen that can be just tweaked within post-production, which again, like I do on Descript, we oftentimes overlay product footage or, stock image or things like that we create with something like a Sora or a Runway, where we create AI generated video as well, to show what we're talking about and visualize, especially when we're talking about like weather. A great one was like, we wanted to show like a ranging of size of hail, because hail's getting more extreme and there's not that many photos of like crazy size hail on the internet. And so it's like, how can we also use AI tools too to overlay and create AI generated images? So yeah, that would be my add-on.
No, you both raised fantastic points about there's like HeyGen's technology is incredibly approachable, and it's obviously adding a ton of value into your stack. And with post-production being what it is, it sounds like saving you guys time because you're not having to, reshoot with humans, which is always going to be a big time saver. And also it takes less coordination. You don't have to hire actors, etc. One of the favorite things I discovered, everybody builds their own avatar when they join HeyGen. And as I was playing around with mine to try to get her to sound more enthusiastic, I think it was at like midnight. And I just had I was so excited for my first day at work. I was almost like coding in the script because I figured out if you add more exclamation points or if you add emojis, it can actually change the inflection of the avatar's words because so there's all kinds of fun things like that I think at HeyGen we can do an even better job of showing people how to get scripts to be exactly how you want them, because there's definitely an art to this, right? Marketing is a craft, and particularly adapting as public a figure as your CMO to an AI avatar space and leveraging that like you do, that inspires me to want to make our product even better and more seamless. So this is fantastic. And I'm glad that, where we are today, it's still extremely valuable and saving you so much time and helping you leverage these campaigns. And then one quick question for all of you. Do you translate your content into any other languages? And is there any use case for that on your team?
Definitely. Yeah. Sorry, Ruth, go ahead.
I didn't know. Yeah, I can take that. So we're in the process of doing that right now, actually. I literally translated a video this morning in HeyGen just to I feel like it's different every time, and I'm always curious to see what is the output here, what needs to be changed, and how can we use this in content. But we are a global company and we work with governments all over the world. So there are times where we need to translate an entire, our documentary. It would make sense to translate that into Spanish or into German if we wanted to send it to prospects out there, and still keeping the human in the process. Checking for accuracy with them. I'm a native Spanish speaker, so I've been able to watch the content and be like, oh, wow, okay. Sounds like my mom. Okay, we can go.
That is high praise, by the way. It sounds like that's incredible.
I was actually kind of blown away by how it works, because it sounds like the person who is speaking, the intonation is there. So our CEO sounds like our CEO in Spanish. And I'm like, I don't think he speaks Spanish. So this is actually insane. But we see a lot of use cases in being able to send that to more prospects and sending our international teams additional content that they can then send to their clients and the people that they're trying to build relationships with. And then, ads, being able to target additional audiences around the world, and knowing that the language is localized to them and actually makes sense to them.
That's a fantastic way to leverage our platform. And what I'm hearing, just saying that back, you work with world governments. You're conveying vital information about weather and natural disasters and things that affect real people. And the fact that HeyGen is so core to your stack and how you communicate that information, the fact that you have executives that are comfortable being represented by their AI counterparts, really inspiring stuff, guys. And so this is why conversations like this and just getting this out there, I can't tell you how many people, since I started working for HeyGen, I talk to who say, oh, I wish I just could hear from other teams and understand what they do in a marketing context. Because there's so much creator first AI content that this kind of perspective is just so valuable for what we want to communicate and who we want to reach. So as we're digging into things like conversion rates, and this can go to the whole team. I know that from your case study and just from talking to all of you, you've used personalized video ads and I think interactive tutorials. Can you speak to the ROI or just the impact on conversion rates for those materials in your campaigns?
Yeah, I would say that it's a mix when we talk ROI here of a few different categories. So first off, it's just efficiency. We've talked about it already, but how much time are we saving? How has that freed us up so that we can go think strategically and do some big activations? And then beyond that, it's actual engagement metrics. So I'd say on the ad side, for example, it's click-through rates. And we can tell that it's working because we can compare to previous ads that we've done, both real video production, By the way, the avatars are, I swear to you, working better than some real people. I can't explain it, but it's working. And then also compared to like stock footage, stuff like that. Click-through rates and then actual like demo conversions. That's our acquisition method, is just actually getting people on the phone so we can track to see actually, who is coming from that ad and actually talking to us. And then beyond that, like I said, it's just understanding the fact that we didn't have to spend so much time for X, Y, or Z piece. What were we able to go do with that time, and how did that contribute to revenue? And that is something we're able to track. So it's really multifaceted there. It's not just that individual piece, those engagement metrics and the conversion, certainly, but it's beyond that. It's like efficiency and like, how can we free ourselves up in a way that we are able to go impact another, metric with that time.
So saying that back, it sounds like your audience has been receptive, so the ads are effective. So leveraging avatars, like, and even if we can't explain it, it's great that people are receptive to them and they're engaging with your ads. And then also the time saved. I think one of the facets of AI, everyone has different attitudes on AI, especially in the advent of AI we find ourselves in, right? And the people I think that I see professionally who are using it really smartly are using it to unblock their creativity, because they can automate tasks that, like writing briefs or meeting notes that would have taken them a lot of time. And instead, what you really are also gaining, like the real return on investment for your team with using a product like HeyGen, is that you have more time to go do bigger activations. You can get your CMO to speak more frequently. And so you're just really like unlocking your team's potential with that. And that to me is really inspiring, because it just says that HeyGen is so much more than a platform. Like, people are connecting with our avatars. People are seeing versions of themselves, and apparently speaking Spanish even as well as their mom, which is always fantastic to hear. So we're about halfway through the session. I know we're gathering some Q&A from our audience. We've got a couple more sections to get through. So I would love to chat about any like challenges that you've overcome as a team and any lessons learned there, because I think that's really valuable. Then we can talk about, how you measure success and look ahead a little bit. We'll wrap up the conversation, and then we'll get to some Q&A, because I think we're going to have some good engagement. So Kelly, going over to you, what were some of the biggest hurdles in integrating advanced AI solutions into Tomorrow.io's marketing plan? Because you were there before you had HeyGen, before you had AI at the company. Any feedback or insight there, we'd love to hear.
I'd say honestly, like, first off, we had an appetite for it. Like I told you, we're a really lean team. We 80-20, like Ruth said. So like, we're naturally curious. I'd almost say the biggest hurdle was just, how far can we go? I think the ecosystem is changing so rapidly that if you are not proactively consuming it, you're risking falling behind. So it's just making sure that we're staying up with the latest. And that's why Ruth is here and able to help us to make sure, hey, this new tool came out. Let's make sure that we know about it. And so before HeyGen, for example, we had tried a few other AI avatar tools and they just weren't working for us. And so we quickly pivoted. We found HeyGen and ran with it. And so I think it's, like I said, just making sure that you're staying on top of it so you know what tools are out there. And then beyond that, just trying to get buy-in. And I think I saw some questions around this. I would say that in terms of, getting our CMO, for example, to want to do this or trying to convince other people, yes, that's a natural hurdle. Like, I myself, do I want to be an avatar? I don't know. I'm not sure. I think that what we have done is that we lead with showing instead of telling. Do it first and show them. I think people underestimate how good this technology is. Once they see the avatars, it's like a no-brainer. It's so natural. You don't sound robotic. We're not going to blast it out without your knowledge. It's a lot of trust and it's a lot of showing instead of telling, in my opinion.
Fantastic. And when we're talking about overcoming AI hurdles, let's talk about that for a sec. Because I'd never become an avatar before I started working at HeyGen. I'd seen the technology on like TikTok or like other places I consume like short form video content. But then actually becoming an interactive avatar and shooting a studio avatar for myself recently, and knowing that a life-size hologram of me is going to be at a conference in a box, and people are going to be able to talk to life-size virtual Anna. It's really cool. And I watched all kinds of sci-fi as a kid. And so I feel like there's kind of two camps right now. There's people who think it's really cool and just are like, yeah, of course I want to have an avatar of me. But how did you get executive buy-in? Because I know that not all of your executives, just from talking to you, were game to be an avatar. So how did we get Dan, and what's special about your CMO that made him willing to jump in and do this?
Yeah, Ruth, do you want to add on, I guess, to what I was saying? I'm sure you have some more thoughts too. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think Dan is just a very unique leader in the fact that he wants his team to also be at the front and like showing things. And so he leads by example and is showing us like, okay, if we want buy-in from everyone else, then we need to be the ones trying it and showing everyone what we can succeed with this and accomplish with it. So it really is just like him telling us, yeah, let's try it. Go for it. And like, I've been in marketing roles where I'm like a little anxious to try new things, but here I'm anxious to find out what I get to try out next. And like, it's excitement, right? So we really just have a leader who is showing us like, this is how we get buy-in and this is how we can go about this. And he's very willing to try anything new, I think. So yeah, I mean, I could sing Dan's praises all day long.
Dan's slugging everyone.
And did I remember correctly, was he like a former meteorologist or like weather broadcaster?
So that's one of our business development guys on the gov sides. So he works with like our state and local governments. We used him. So like, you know, in getting buy-in from additional people, who can we go to? And like, we know Ed loves being on camera. He is very, very comfortable on camera. He has a background in broadcast meteorology. So we can go to him and be like, hey, can we try this? And he was like, yeah, go for it. Send me things. I would love to see like what comes of it. And then we have, you know, other people who, to Kelly's point, are a little hesitant. They're like, I don't know if I want to be an AI avatar. So I think, in my opinion, that like AI adoption and just this cultural hurdle of accepting AI is something that we're going to be grappling with for the next, 5 years, truthfully. I feel like we've kind of bridged that. Like if we're thinking about the adoption curve, right? Like we're past the halfway mark of that actual curve. And now we're trying to get the people who were questioning it from the very beginning to adopt this thing and trying to show them like, no, look, this is what's capable. This is what's possible with this. You want in.
What do you think is there something special about the avatar creation experience? Like for an executive, for example, like they're a public figure, they are typically media trained. They talk, you know, they have the PR team on speed dial. Did you ever notice that anyone was like, wow, this is actually really cool? Like, was there also kind of like a delight factor to it? Or was it more so just like, oh yeah, that's a high quality enough version of me that we can use that? Like, was there anything about that experience that surprised you? And as you're getting buy-in with executives on your team?
Madison, do you have any? I feel like you've talked to Dan a lot about tweaking his avatar. I think you might have some thoughts here. Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because I think like, so I was going to chime in that the one thing that the other day that kind of not Dan's feedback, but a personal friend of mine's feedback, because I am working on a new ad series. I won't give anything overly away, but we have a new AI Dan, and I showed it to my friend, and I'm like, wow, this is so professional shoot. And I was like, yeah, like, do you think, like, what do you think of it? Like everything. And she was like, yeah, there's one part that sounds like slightly monotone, like that's slightly AI, but that's it. I go, well, can I tell you something? She goes, what? I'm like, the whole video is an AI avatar. She's like, she literally kept reversing it. No, you're lying. And I think that's the biggest thing is like, once you show that this is not some like clunky thing that's going to ultimately hurt their brand, right? I think there's from what the concern I have heard is about personal branding and how does this affect my personal branding moving forward if I say it tomorrow or I move somewhere else. It's like showing that a tool like this, like it's not going to hurt your personal brand. If anything, it's going to make you more face forward in the company. It's very professional. You look good. Like we wouldn't, also like as a marketing, we're not going to make you look bad. We will not do that to you. I think that is a really cool thing. But in terms of talking with Dan, it's always a funny conversation. Because I'm like, I feel like I talk to you all the time, but I don't. I'm just talking to your AI avatar. But I think for him, it's like it's always a bit of this like uncanny moment. Like I didn't say that. But especially, you know, when we've worked with it a lot and we learned how to, like, I especially have learned how to use HeyGen, like you were talking about, I figured out basically the coding of it is exclamation points, right? that is where I'm at, where I'm like learning how to tweak the script to get Dan to look and say the things exactly as I want them to. He watches it back and he's like, oh, this is great. But it's also like just really funny to see myself saying stuff I don't remember saying. It's probably uncanny, but it's as long as you're making sure that they're not, they're feeling confident with how they look, I feel like there's always good reception. But yeah, as like Ruth was mentioning, I think there's like a bit of this hurdle of like that trust and getting used to being willing. It's like, I think have any of us really become AI avatars before like a HeyGen has been in our life? I highly doubt it. Maybe like those Snapchat like filters that like made you dance or something at some point, but those are pretty low commitment, and not being like posted and blasted all over LinkedIn. So
if you had to guess, if you had to guess, how many like virtual appearances has your CMO made in avatar mode? Like how many appearances are we talking here?
You guys would know best. I mean, we have 3 versions of him.
We have 3 versions of him.
Ooh, yeah. Okay. We had some things to talk about, but let's talk about the versions of your CMO. Okay. So what are the 3 versions of the avatar, the HeyGen avatar that you've created of your CMO, Dan?
Yeah. So, okay. Well, the very first video that we had of him was like him giving a product announcement, very excited, lots of hand movements. And we used him for the first few months. And then we realized that the hand motions weren't matching up with what he was speaking. The enthusiasm was a bit much for some of the subject matter that he was talking about.
Yeah.
And so then we decided to make 2 more avatars, one where he's just sitting and is wearing a different outfit, first off, because we were thinking, well, wouldn't it look better if he was wearing something different? Like, you can't dress him up. so, Dan in different outfits, Dan not moving his hands. And then we realized, well, those are a little too monotone. Can we like get the enthusiasm from the first one without the hand movements? And Madison, I don't know if you want to speak to using that one right now.
Yes. He's my favorite AI Dan. I'm such a big fan. Yeah, I think we were like going through, because I also was going to say that I did mention before, like a big thing I've realized with HeyGen is like it takes what you give to it. Like, and that's AI in general. It's like people that are starting out ChatGPT, they like throw something and they're like, oh, what I got back was bad. And I was like, well, did you prompt it with like clear instructions, right? And we have like HeyGen is like an AI learning tool. It's learning this person and this avatar. And I will never claim that I understand any of the things that go behind that. But I think the biggest thing is like, yeah, we have these multiple avatars and they take what we gave it. So the first video was like, woo. And so, yeah, it was trying to figure out, okay, but this script isn't enthusiastic, but I feel like I could put some enthusiasm right here. And the monotone ones were a little, they were not fun or interesting to watch. But the most current one is standing up, no hand motions, which is awesome, and it's enthusiastic. And this is the one that I showed the ad to my friend, and they did not believe me that it was an avatar fully, which I'm not just saying this because we're on the webinar. She was flabbergasted. She was like, I literally don't believe you. But again, it was what we gave to it. Like Dan, after learning HeyGen, he understood like, okay, so I like to talk with my hands. I shouldn't talk with my hands in these videos because it kind of muddles the video a bit. And, sitting down, I think for whatever reason, I think just made him a bit more like stoic, which Dan is not a stoic guy. So it's also like uncanny to work with that one. So standing up, I think gave it a little bit more enthusiasm without all this. That's how I would describe the motion that we were getting from that first one. But it was a great voice, and I still actually do use that avatar when we do voiceovers for things. So I do. He is my favorite AI Dan when it comes to using like kind of different footage we have and wanting to overlay him speaking about something. So there's still always uses.
What's so interesting to me, Madison, about all the perspective you shared is that you are scientifically iterating on an AI version of your executive. And so just in the same way that like you're training the large language model to better emulate Dan's voice and like be the Dan that you recognize, you're helping to bridge that gap between the AI and the human being that is a very busy guy. He's a CMO of a fantastic company. And so the fact that you've had 3 versions of him tells me that you are iterating smartly. You're digging into the tool and you're finding success. And I'd love to kind of double click into the third point that you raised, which is that the third version of Dan has a voice that you use for other projects that don't involve video. That's a use case. I think a lot of people on this session will go, oh, I haven't thought of using HeyGen without video. So if you could share just how you leverage the voices for, creating audio or voiceovers. I think we talked about that in some of our planning for this session, but I'd love to understand more about like how you use the audio capabilities of the platform.
Yeah, Madison, I'm sure you have more to share, but it really is just like back to the point of if you have a blog that you're trying to create a video for, do you turn that into a script and then turn that into a video with your avatar? What if you want a personless video? Sometimes we want audio that sounds like our actual people. Dan voiceovers a lot of content for us. And like before AI, he was like manually recording himself speaking and trying to get the script right and all of that. Whereas now, if we need a voiceover for Dan for any content, whether it's, our documentary series, our annual conference that we put on, or just an ad that we're creating, we can use HeyGen to create that voiceover and use or go through their various avatars that we have and pick out that distinct voice. And then within HeyGen too, there are like different versions of the voices that you can use per avatar. So we're really going in and making sure that like, okay, we're speaking about our space mission. Dan's voice matches the excitement and like, how awesome this is. And, oh, we're speaking about wildfires that happened in LA. Well, the voiceover that we're using is going to be a much more serious and not as enthusiastic. And we can play around with that in HeyGen. And now there's like the ability to simply download the MP4. So you can download just the audio and apply that to whatever you're creating. So like, imagine if you're editing in like Adobe, right? You're just adding in that layer for the voice, and we can do that in Descript or Canva as well.
That's so much trust to put in our product, and it really makes me just thrilled to hear that from everything from like the most somber weather news that affects so many people to exciting things like, go Google tomorrow.io's recent space mission because it's great. You just launched satellites. Am I right?
We have 6 up total right now.
That is so cool. So just the applications for this tech and the fact that you're able to kind of like modulate the emotion in the voice, massively powerful. And Madison, anything to add there?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. You did a great, I think you really covered it, Ruth. I'm trying to think if there's any other like use cases in that way. Like I think too, like tying it maybe back to like the whole AI engine, not like really Ruth is like built up tomorrow and I've learned so much from her. It's like we do take that voice and like use it. Like I've run different fun series that were like carousels on LinkedIn. I'm like, okay, well, how can we make this into video content? Well, I can use this and use a tool that pulls like a script I give it that I run through ChatGPT to give me stock image. And then I'm like, oh, it'd be so much nicer if it was Dan's voice over this. So it feels branded and still like the quality of the rest of our content. So I think there's so many use cases and I think it fits in really, really well when we like go back to that conversation earlier about how do we repurpose and use AI to like go back and extrapolate what we already have. So yeah, it's like, of course the video is great. And I love editing with AI, Dan, but it's even more fantastic to have someone from the company like say something to you versus we all are very familiar with those very AI sounding like voices. And it feels less trustworthy too, right? So it's nice to also have like a trusted voice that you can just like smack in a video. It's like have some cool B-roll, throw that on and say something inspirational. When we're talking about something that's going on in the world and also address it really quickly. I feel like that's like something that like Ruth and Kelly both mentioned is like, we're like a really fast paced team. And so having something that's just able for us to basically quickly act upon something that's like come up that we want to speak to, also been really cool. Yeah.
Amazing. And just being able to move this quickly when you're going up market, when you are reaching new global audiences, you want to, work with different governments or other foreign powers. The your company is just really fascinating to me personally, in terms of like the audience you have, the information you're communicating, and also just how technical a lot of the information that you convey is. So we could talk about that, I'm sure, in another session. In closing, any like tips or tricks or things that you have learned that have made using HeyGen easier in your everyday work, Ruth or Madison?
Yeah, I feel like, I like to offer just typical AI advice, which is always to like, don't expect too much of the tools, because really the tool is only as good as you are at using AI. And so like, practice prompting, because I think in practicing prompting, we have gotten much better in reiterating on these on the scripts that we put into HeyGen, because this didn't work, this didn't sound right. Well, then what would I tell the AI to do? Let me go try to do that and then fix that up in the script, right? So it's like, have realistic expectations for the first time that you try things, because you're also learning it. Like, you're learning the tool, and as you go, you're going to want to learn how to do that even better. And so just, be realistic with what you can accomplish. And maybe after a few weeks of using it, you'll be like, oh, wow, okay, this is exactly what I wanted to create. And now I know the process to teach other people how to get here as well. So if you can teach yourself, you can teach other people, in my opinion. But really just like, try it and go for it, and then continue to build on what you're getting, and don't just think, okay, this is as good as it gets the very first time you try something.
Amazing. And Madison, anything from your work that has made life a little easier, or any tips you want to share with the audience?
I actually do. I have acquired some HeyGen hacks. I think the one we talked about is like, ultimate. Well, one overview, like we said, it gives what I mean, my gosh, whoa. It produces what you give it, right? So if you give it a bad script, if you give it a weird video where it doesn't feel very smooth or cohesive, it's not going to produce what you want out of it. And that's like a big thing, right? Like that we've learned, and I've even learned being in working with different HeyGen avatars, it's like what you give it. I think also that goes to the script. I've learned things like, okay, there's moments that feel awkward. How do we send it? Like dots are my best friend, exclamation points are my best friend. Things like if you want to add a backslash or stuff like that, it's like you want to just write it out perfectly. And the best thing for me that I've learned is like oftentimes I'm actually very happy with how the video avatar. Now I'm at the point where I think our newest AI Dan, I feel like pretty confident that there's not going to be something I feel like, oh gosh, like this whole it doesn't work, it doesn't look real. The thing that for me that I struggle with more is like the tone and how it sounds coming out of his mouth. Like am I conveying the feeling that I want to feel? And it's funny, and maybe people do this right away, but yeah, that little like button at the top that's like preview, I was like, what do you mean preview? Because it takes forever to generate. It previews a script for you, like right off the bat, instead of running it and then being like, oh, I don't like that, gotta go tweak, then hope for the best and wait another couple of minutes for it to give me the video again. Just do that. Make sure you go through it a couple of times, because you still might want to tweak it afterwards. But I think like that's such like a simple thing that like I've been implementing that I don't know why I wasn't before, but like preview the script and make sure it sounds good. Because then you're not going in, letting it run and do that. The other thing I've noticed too is like if you do have the video you're using, you don't have time to ask your CMO or your executive to film another avatar for you. Like we're really lucky that Dan is so like willing to do that for us. And you have a bit of like a quirk in it, right? They like do something with their hands, and so it kind of comes up sometimes. A big thing that I learned too is like running a script a few times through. That was like a big discovery with our first ad series. I was like, why is he doing this? And I just like ran the script, like would make a couple of tweaks, like very small, like adding a ... accent, like adding like the word a or something at some point, and ran it again. And I think I saw the AI learning and like smoothing out some of those like things, that those motions that didn't fit the script. So I think that's my other tip too, is like AI learns from you and what you give it. That's like the whole circular probably conversation that like Ruth brought up and we've been talking about. But especially with HeyGen, like this avatar learns from like the tweaks you're giving it, and it will smooth out like if you keep on playing with it. So that would be my those would be my HeyGen hacks. I definitely have had to learn through doing, for sure. Like Ruth was saying.
So summing those points up, and correct me if I'm wrong, don't give up. Like AI is new. The technology is new, and HeyGen is moving faster than any other video company, I think, in the space when it comes to producing really realistic, marketing-friendly content. So don't give up. And then, to Madison and Ruth's point, check your prompt. So you can always, figure out how to code in your script. You can add more exclamation points. You can add emojis. You can play around and see what the LLM gives you back, and then continue to train that avatar. Keep working with it, give it more content and more fuel for that fire. Well, we've had a fantastic discussion for 55 minutes. This is a wealth of content and insight. Cannot thank you all three enough for giving us so much of your time today. And we've got some really good questions in Q&A. So with our last 5 minutes, I'd love to do like a lightning round. So I'll just, pick folks and have you answer them, or we can open them to the floor. But we have one question from Samantha, who's the VP of Marketing at Employ. And I'd love to give this to Kelly so that we can go one VP to another. What are some metrics that the team uses to track the effectiveness of using AI? So some options that she offered were like mixture of efficiency or engagement. Is it engagement rate or click-through rate? Like, what are you seeing as a VP, and what do you look at?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's what you said, lastly, the mixture there. So I think it's efficiency. How much time are we saving? What are we doing with that time? Are we going to spend it on, something that's also revenue generating? That's impactful for us. And then the engagement side, what are the actual typical metrics, click-throughs, what, discovery calls are we getting from this? So definitely a mixture. And also just how does it allow us to dream, I would say. Like I was thinking as we talked about the different types of avatars, there's actually projects now that I think before HeyGen we didn't even consider. For example, going into new international markets that before would have just felt totally like closed off to us because of just like a natural language barrier restriction, let's say. So there's some things that are a little harder to track, and that's okay. And I think they're just as impactful, if not more so, is just how is the HeyGen functionality allowing me to think bigger and dream about new areas of brand or demand or product marketing that I just flat out wouldn't have even considered before. So definitely a mixture.
Incredible. And then it sounds like also in your work, you're telling your teams that narrative of like your team's accomplishments and their contributions to tomorrow.io. So it's, hey, we leverage this technology. CMO Dan's made 1 million appearances. We're communicating all kinds of information to a global audience. And then with that time we're saving, what are we going to work on next? Like, what are we going to dream up and what are we going to build? Just such an inspiring use of our platform, and exactly why I wanted all of you here today. Thank you so much.
Exactly.
And then we've got some more questions. So from Steve, after HeyGen, what programs do you use during post-production? So I heard from a couple, I know we've got some other tools like Descript for tweaks, but any other quick hacks that you didn't already mention that really complement your use of HeyGen and help you move fast?
Yeah, I think a couple other tools that are probably in the mix there are like we'll grab images or visuals from Runway. We are testing out to see how Sora can help us in adding in additional dynamic graphics and the like. We've used a tool called Jitter AI to create motion graphics that we add into the video. And like, we're big Canva fans. If we can't find something in Descript, let me find it in Canva, download and upload to Descript to like do some editing there. But it really is like anything that you can use to enhance your video even further. If you're going the route of, well, I just made this really long video in HeyGen and I want to cut it up automatically, like we've used Opus clips in the past for automatic clips. But I think those 5 or 6 tools probably round out all of our video AI.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And we've got a few more questions. So from Fabrizio, hello, Super Tomorrow team. Are you using interactive avatar in your company?
Not yet is the answer, but please, Ruth and Madison, you know this more, but I would say not yet, but we're very interested and we can already envision, to my point about like dreaming with you guys, we can already envision where to use it. And by the way, like your team's also helping us. That's something we haven't mentioned. I think is just like the partnership and services side here. But Ruth and Madison, you guys probably know more technically. how we
Yeah,
can
no,
use it.
we're exploring this right now, which is why actually Madison is testing out additional avatars. Like, how can we use our customer success or customer support team for a customer support chatbot? Is there something we can put on the front page? If so, who would that be? Can we use this avatar of Ed, for example, for specific industries? So it's a matter of like, we're figuring it out, but we are, to Kelly's point, like dreaming up of other ways we can use HeyGen. And before, a customer support chatbot with an actual person talking to you would have never been possible.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, remind me, I will email you a link to my interactive avatar, and I have a couple other team members that you can talk to and interact with. And for anyone who hasn't checked it out, interactive avatar, you can actually type in questions. You can train the LLM of the interactive avatar so that it has expertise in a particular knowledge base. And of course, with HeyGen, you've got all of the guardrails and security and compliance that you would with any other enterprise software. Thank you all so much for this conversation today. We are right on time. We've covered all of the other questions. I think they were mostly covering things like learnings when you first started, and have those learnings changed how you are using your tool stack. So thank you so much for your candor. Really appreciate all of you coming online today. And I hope everybody enjoyed the session, and feel free to catch us in the next one.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. This was fun.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah,
We love
thank
HeyGen.
you.
Thank
We
you.
love HeyGen. HeyGen is the best.